How one failure fueled a billionaire's destiny. In the spring of 1995, a young engineer sat in a cramped Manhattan apartment, staring at a decision that would change the trajectory of American commerce forever. At 31 years old, with a Princeton degree and a comfortable six-figure salary at one of Wall Street's most prestigious hedge funds, he had seemingly made it. Now he was about to walk away from it all, and within months, he would question whether he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. But here's what doesn't make sense. Within 3 decades, this same man would become one of the wealthiest people on Earth, revolutionizing multiple industries from retail to cloud computing. His company would generate revenues exceeding $500 billion annually. The question that puzzles business analysts isn't just how he succeeded. It's why a catastrophic near failure in the year 2000 was the actual turning point that made everything possible. What happened in that moment of crisis that rewired his entire strategy? And perhaps most unsettling, could his extraordinary success have only emerged from the ashes of that particular defeat? The architecture of ambition. To understand what was about to unfold, we need to understand Wall Street in the early 1990s. A new breed of quantitative analysts, quants, were storming traditional finance. These weren't conventional bankers. They were mathematicians and computer scientists who saw markets as systems to be decoded through algorithms. Jeffrey Preston Bezos fit this profile perfectly. Born to a teenage mother and later adopted by his Cuban immigrant stepfather, he had grown up worshiping intellect and efficiency. At Princeton, he studied electrical engineering and computer science, graduating summa cum laude in 1986. Where others saw chaos, he saw systems. By 1990, he landed at D. Shaw and Company, a hedge fund built around using computer science to find market inefficiencies. Bezos thrived, quickly becoming one of the youngest senior vice presidents in the company's history. Then in 1994, while researching growth trends, he discovered a statistic that stopped him cold. Web usage was growing at 2,300% per year. Not 23%, not 230%, 2,300%. The numbers seemed impossible, but when he verified it, he realized the internet wasn't just growing, it was exploding at a rate with no historical precedent. His mind raced through the implications. If web usage was expanding that dramatically, it meant a fundamental shift in how humans would interact with commerce. The question wasn't whether the internet would transform retail, it was who would get there first. But D. Shaw was a hedge fund, not a startup incubator. When Bezos approached founder David Shaw about building an online bookstore, the response was measured. Interesting concept, wrong venue, not their business model. Bezos faced an impossible choice. He had everything a 30-year-old could want: prestige, security, wealth. Starting an internet company in 1994 was considered lunacy. E-commerce barely existed. The infrastructure for digital retail simply wasn't there yet. He developed what he called a regret minimization framework, imagining himself at 80 looking back. Would he regret trying and failing, or never trying at all? In summer 1994, he left D. Shaw to pursue what most considered a fantasy. But this isn't where the failure happened. Not yet. The deceptive rise. What followed became Silicon Valley legend. Bezos and his wife drove cross-country to Seattle, with him typing a business plan in the passenger seat. Working from his garage, he and early employees built the website, sourced distributors, and created infrastructure for online commerce that didn't exist yet. The site launched in July 1995. Within a month, Amazon was shipping to all 50 states and 45 countries. Revenue exploded. $20,000 the first month, $100,000 by December. Everything Bezos predicted was proving correct. But here's what most tellings miss. Amazon wasn't succeeding in any traditional sense. Yes, revenue was exploding, but the company was hemorrhaging money catastrophically. For every dollar of product sold, Amazon spent $2 on technology and infrastructure. By late 1999, Wall Street analysts were calling it Amazon.bomb, predicting imminent collapse. The company had expanded from books into music, electronics, toys, investing billions in warehouses and distribution networks while profits remained nowhere in sight. In June 2000, a Lehman Brothers analyst published a report predicting Amazon would run out of cash within a year. The stock, which had peaked at $106 per share, plummeted to $6. Market value evaporated by over 90%. Employees abandoned ship. Creditors demanded additional collateral. But this still wasn't the failure that mattered. The real turning point happened in a Seattle conference room in early 2000 during a meeting almost nobody outside Amazon knew about. The breaking point. The meeting was supposed to be routine, a quarterly strategy review, but Amazon's leadership team was fracturing. Some executives argued for pulling back to core profitability. Others pushed for more aggressive expansion. Then Bezos proposed investing $300 million in developing a third-party marketplace, allowing outside merchants to sell directly on Amazon's platform. The room exploded. The objections were logical. Amazon was already losing hundreds of millions quarterly. Its stock was in free fall. Customers came to Amazon for Amazon's products. Why would they want unknown third-party sellers? Worst of all, it meant facilitating their own competitors. One senior executive put it bluntly, "We're drowning, and you want to build a boat for someone else?" Then something unprecedented happened. Bezos' senior team, almost unanimously, rejected his proposal. Those present remember the silence, stretching uncomfortably. Bezos didn't argue. He didn't marshal data. He simply acknowledged their skepticism and said he needed time to think. That night, alone in his office, Bezos confronted a terrifying possibility. What if he was wrong? Not wrong about the internet. That was undeniable. Wrong about Amazon's strategy. Wrong about his own judgment. He spent hours reviewing every decision of the previous 6 years. Some expansions had worked brilliantly. Others had been expensive disasters. Some confident predictions had proven wrong. Some hesitant gambles had paid off spectacularly. Then he asked himself the question that changed everything. Why had he left E. Shaw in the first place? The obvious answer was to start Amazon, but that wasn't quite right. He had left because he saw an opportunity the existing system couldn't accommodate. D. Shaw was structurally incapable of building an internet commerce company. Its entire model, incentives, risk tolerance, expertise, was oriented toward different value creation. That's when it crystallized. Amazon wasn't failing because its strategy was wrong. It was struggling because it was trying to be something it wasn't. The company had been built around first-party retail. Amazon buys products, stores them, ships them. That model worked, but had inherent limitations. It required massive capital for inventory. It constrained selection to what Amazon could stock. It pitted Amazon against every retailer in zero-sum competition. But what if Amazon wasn't really a retailer at all? What if it was infrastructure? The marketplace idea his team rejected wasn't about facilitating competitors. It was about transcending the entire competitive framework. If Amazon built a platform allowing anyone to sell anything, the company would no longer be limited by its own capital or inventory. Selection would become virtually infinite. Value would shift from Amazon's products to Amazon's system. It was the same insight that drove him from D. Shaw, applied one level up. Don't compete in the existing game. Change the game's structure entirely. The reconstruction. The next morning, Bezos returned with his decision. Amazon would build the marketplace, but with a crucial difference. They'd build it to make Amazon stronger, not weaker. Third-party sellers would access Amazon's customers and infrastructure, but would pay through fees and commissions. Amazon would handle payment processing, customer service, and fulfillment. The platform would generate revenue whether Amazon's products sold or not. Several senior executives resigned. Board members were skeptical. Wall Street dismissed it as more delusional thinking. The marketplace launched in November 2000 to minimal fanfare and disappointing adoption. Most established retailers refused to participate. The sellers who joined were often small, unreliable merchants whose products didn't meet Amazon standards. But Bezos had learned that failures contain information, success is obscure. Every marketplace problem revealed what customers actually wanted. Poor seller performance led to rating systems. Shipping complaints led to fulfillment by Amazon. Quality concerns led to automated counterfeit detection. Each iteration made the platform more valuable. The proposition became compelling. Sellers could reach Amazon's massive customer base, leverage its trusted brand, and outsource complex logistics. For small businesses, it was enterprise-grade retail infrastructure at a fraction of the cost. By 2003, third-party sales represented 20% of Amazon's units. By 2006, over 30%. By 2018, 58%. Today, over 2 million sellers use Amazon's platform, generating hundreds of billions annually. The marketplace is now larger than Amazon's own retail business. But the marketplace was only the beginning. The same insight that Amazon's real value was infrastructure cascaded through every business aspect. Technology systems built for Amazon's computational needs could be offered as a service. This became Amazon Web Services, now generating over $90 billion annually. The warehouse network became fulfillment by Amazon. Payment systems became Amazon Pay. Hardware exploration created the Kindle. Voice recognition led to Alexa. Logistics expertise spawned Amazon's delivery network. Each business represented the same strategy. Build infrastructure Amazon needs, then offer it to everyone else. The model became known as the Amazon flywheel, a self-reinforcing cycle where better infrastructure attracts sellers, creating better selection, attracting more customers, generating more resources to improve infrastructure. By 2010, Amazon stock recovered to $125, higher than its bubble peak. By 2015, $650. By 2020, over $3,000. Bezos's net worth eventually exceeded $200 billion, making him the world's wealthiest person. But here's the unsettling part. None of this was inevitable. It required that specific failure. The moment his team rejected his vision to force the deeper insight about what Amazon actually was. If the marketplace had been approved enthusiastically, it likely would have been implemented poorly without the crucial innovations that made it work. If Amazon stock hadn't collapsed, the company might have continued raising endless capital for unprofitable expansion, never developing the discipline for sustainable business models. The failure wasn't a detour from success. It was the mechanism that made success possible. The pattern that repeats. This pattern appears throughout modern business with eerie consistency. Yet we consistently fail to recognize it. Consider General Motors and Chrysler in 2008. Both dominated American manufacturing for generations with every conceivable advantage: brand recognition, dealer networks, manufacturing expertise, political influence. Yet both collapsed into bankruptcy within months, requiring government bailouts. They had optimized for the wrong game, building large vehicles with high margins, financed through cheap credit. When gas prices spiked and credit froze, the model disintegrated. Meanwhile, Tesla, which shouldn't have existed by traditional logic, was building electric vehicles the establishment dismissed as toys. Tesla itself nearly failed in 2008, coming within weeks of bankruptcy. That near-death experience forced CEO Elon Musk to rethink every assumption about how cars were made, sold, and serviced. Today, Tesla is worth more than GM, Ford, and Chrysler combined. Or examine Blockbuster Video. In 2000, it generated $5 billion annually from 9,000 stores. That same year, Netflix tried selling itself to Blockbuster for $50 million. Blockbuster declined, viewing DVD buy mail as a niche market. By 2010, Blockbuster was bankrupt. Today, Netflix is worth over $250 billion. Blockbuster was optimized for physical scarcity, limited shelf space, late fees, geographic monopolies. Netflix was built around abundance, convenience, and data-driven personalization. When streaming became possible, Blockbuster couldn't pivot because its entire infrastructure was anchored to the old paradigm. The pattern extends to Microsoft. In the 1990s, it dominated computing with over 90% of personal computer operating systems. Yet almost completely missed the internet revolution, dismissing web-based applications. Only Crisis, the Justice Department antitrust case, combined with Google's rise, forced fundamental rethinking. Under new leadership in the 2010s, Microsoft embraced cloud computing through Azure, shifted Office to subscriptions, and open-source core technologies. Today, it's again one of the world's most valuable companies, but only because failure forced reconception. The disturbing implication: success creates cognitive traps only failure can break. When you're winning, every instinct says optimize current strategy rather than question foundations. Profitable companies are structurally disincentivized from disrupting themselves. The mechanisms that make successful companies successful also make them vulnerable to disruption. Of companies in the Fortune 500 in 2000, over half no longer exist or have fallen out of rankings. The average S&P 500 company lifespan has dropped from 67 years in the 1920s to just 15 years today. Markets are becoming less forgiving, and what Harvard's Clayton Christensen called the innovator's dilemma intensifies. The better a company gets at serving current customers, the more vulnerable it becomes to disruptive competitors serving different customers differently. 3 lessons from the edge. 3 lessons emerge that challenge conventional wisdom. First, the value of failure is informational, not motivational. Popular culture treats failure as character building, making you tougher. That's not what mattered in Bezos' story. What mattered was that failure forced questioning assumptions he wouldn't have examined otherwise. When strategy works, you optimize. When it fails, you reconceive. Failure created informational value that success would have obscured. Companies that never fail often aren't resilient. They're fragile because they've never tested assumptions against contradictory reality. Firms surviving major disruptions usually aren't the most successful during stability, but those that experience failure severe enough to force reconception without being severe enough to destroy them. Second, infrastructure beats products in long-term value creation. Amazon succeeded not because it was better at retail than Walmart, better at technology than Microsoft, or better at logistics than FedEx. It succeeded because it built infrastructure making all those activities more efficient for everyone, then capture percentage of value created. We're seeing this replicate across industries. The most valuable companies aren't selling products, they're providing platforms. The future belongs to firms that make it easier for everyone else to do things well, then extract rent from that facilitation. Third, the cognitive traps of success are structural, not personal. It's tempting to view Amazon's near-death and recovery as a story about Bezos's unique vision. But the dynamic has little to do with individual characteristics. Successful strategies create organizational structures, incentive systems, and mental models that actively resist information, allowing adaptation. Failure is often necessary because success creates structural barriers to seeing alternatives. This suggests the most important innovations might not be new products, but new organizational structures allowing adaptation without requiring catastrophic failure as catalyst. How do you challenge assumptions while executing effectively? How do you reward exploring alternatives without creating chaos? The unanswered question. We began with a man in a Manhattan apartment in 1995 at the end of one path and beginning of another. 3 decades later, his company reshaped global commerce, pioneered cloud computing, and accumulated unimaginable wealth. But here's the question that should keep us awake. Was the failure truly necessary? Or do we only tell the story that way because it's the story that happened? Suppose Bezos had never worked at D. Shaw. Would he have had the insight to view infrastructure as more valuable than products? Or suppose Amazon's initial strategy had worked perfectly. Would it have evolved into the same force, or become just another successful but limited retailer? We can't know. History runs once. We're forced to extract patterns from single examples, claim causation from correlation, build theories from survivorship bias. For every failure that fueled a billionaire's destiny, thousands simply ended in oblivion. For every crisis forcing brilliant reconception, hundreds led to panic and accelerated decline. Perhaps the real lesson isn't about failure at all. Perhaps it's about the tension between optimization and exploration, between exploiting known advantages and discovering new possibilities. Success pushes toward optimization. Failure forces exploration. The question is whether we can build systems, companies, markets, societies that maintain exploratory mindset without requiring catastrophe as catalyst. Because the pattern accelerates, disruption rates increase, competitive advantage lifespans shrink, cognitive traps tighten, and somewhere right now, in a conference room or garage, someone confronts a failure that will either destroy them or force the insight that reshapes an industry. The machinery of creative destruction continues turning, indifferent to whether we understand its mechanisms. The only certainty is that today's giants will eventually face their own conference room confrontation. That moment when the strategy that built success stops working, and they must choose between defending the past or reconceiving the future. The question isn't whether such moments will come. The question is whether we'll recognize them for what they are, not endings, but the raw material of transformation, if we have the courage to use them. If this story challenges how you think about failure, success, or innovation, share it with someone who needs to read it. The patterns only become visible when we discuss them openly and prepare for disruptions we can't yet see.